Mahabharata, Chapter 2, Bhishma's Vow, read by Nirvan Bajaj and Equir Bajaj. Mahabharata, Chapter 2, Bhishma's Vow. Vyasa's epic on the Bharat race was first recited in public by his disciple Vaishampayan at the behest of the aegis seer Vyasa himself. The recital took place in the august presence of King Janamjaya, great-grandson of the grandson of Vyasa, and the many learned sages who had assembled for Janamjaya's Sarpasatra. The first session of a rendering of Vaishampayan's recital included the incidents leading to Bhishma, the son of Shantanu, taking a vow of celibacy and Shantanu marrying Satyavati. Vaishampayan then continued, O monarch, two sons were born to Satyavati and Shantanu of Bharat's race. They were called Chitrangad and Vichitravirya. Years later, Shantanu passed away and Bhishma crowned Chitrangad as the king of Hastinapur, vanquishing the denizens of this world and the other supremes. He reigned supreme. Urged by his supremacy, a Gandharv of the same name challenged him to a fight on the field of Kurukshetra. After a terrible combat which lasted 3 years, Chitrangad was slain and the Gandharva returned to his celestial abode. Vichitravirya, who was still a minor, was placed on the throne by Bhishma. The boy ruled the ancestral kingdom, guided by Bhishma, whom he adored for his valor and virtue. When Vichitravirya came of age and was ready for marriage, Bhishma, the ever-watchful, heard that the 3 daughters of the king of Kashi would be choosing their husbands at a Swayamvar ceremony. So with the permission of Satyavati, Bhishma, the fierce warrior and the faithful regent, went to Kashi in a single chariot. There he sought those 3 maidens and the many kings who had come for the Swayamvar. And addressing the king of Kashi and the assembled suitors in a deep thundering voice, he said, O maiden, be given away to a suitable groom along with many valuable gifts, or she may be given away in exchange for a few cows or for a fixed sum of gold. Some may take away maidens by force and some wed them with their consent. Marriage with the maiden's consent is spoken of highly, but, Bhishma continued, a precious wife is one who has been snatched away from contending suitors. The mighty prince, Bhishma, then gathered the maidens into his chariot and challenged the kings. I am taking away these maidens by force on behalf of my brother. O brave kings, come try your might and stop me if you can. Smarting under the scorn of Bhishma, the array of kings stood up as one man ready to fight. Without a moment's loss, the kings cast off their wedding finery and reached for their armor. The sparkle of their ornaments, the gleam of the weapons, and the clang of metals rent the air with the brilliance of a meteoric burst. The impatient kings, in their martial rage, brandished their weapons and pursued the chief of the Kurus. And then there followed, O monarch, a terrible fight. The swarm of arrows from the multitude of kings was checked by Bhishma with a shower of arrows from a single bow, a shower as innumerable as the hair on one's body. The battle raged so fierce with clashing weapons and flying missiles that it struck terror in the hearts of even those who were mere spectators. In no time, the ground was strewn with heads, swerved from bodies, flagstaffs from chariots, and armors from heaving chests. And such was the prowess of Bhishma that even the enemies who came to fight him remained to applaud. As the virtuous Bhishma turned his chariot towards Hastinapur, Shalva, the king of Saubha, challenged him to a single combat. Bhishma, ready to face the fresh foe, said to his charioteer, "Take the chariot towards Shalva. He shall have what he deserves." Bhishma slew Shalva's steeds and charioteer, but spared his life, and proceeded with the maidens towards Hastinapur. Ruthless on the battlefield, Bhishma was full of tenderness when it came to looking after the maidens, as he brought them to Vichitraveer. When the details of the weddings were settled by Bhishma and approved by Satyavati Amba, the eldest of the maidens said to Bhishma, "Even before the Swayamvar was held, I had chosen the king of Saubha. He had accepted, and my father had approved."
"Now that you know this, do as you choose,"
Amba, the eldest of the maidens, said to Bhishma. The wise and virtuous Bhishma, after pondering on the matter, permitted Amba to do as she liked, but gave Ambika and Ambalika in marriage to his brother Vichitraveer. 7 years later, Vichitraveer died of consumption without leaving an heir. When the funeral rites were concluded, Satyavati consoled her daughters-in-law and Bhishma. And when came to perpetuate the parental and maternal lines of the Kurus, she said, "You are the only one who can help to carry forward the line and the achievements of Shantanu, your father. You are wise and virtuous and are aware of what is right. Therefore, I charge you with the responsibility. I charge you to beget children with these princesses of Kashi and keep Shantanu's line alive. Install yourself on the throne and rule over the kingdom." And to this Bhishma said, "I cannot beget child, nor by the king. My vow is well known." Satyavati replied, "I know that your vow was on my account, but this calamity was unforeseen. If you adhere to your vow, your ancestors will be denied this right to salvation." Thus, urged by words uttered in desperate sorrow by Satyavati, Bhishma said, "Breach of truth is never approved by our sacred texts. However, the Kshatriyas do have a recourse to a custom which has been sanctioned by tradition." What do you want to say?
I say,
An accomplished man could be invited to raise offsprings in the wives of Vichitraveer. Satyavati, smiling bashfully, then said, "O prince, in your race you are virtue, you are truth, you are our sole refuge. Therefore, listen to my story and do what is proper." And Satyavati told Bhishma in private of how she met Parashar when she was a maiden, and of the son Krishna Dwapayan born to them. The son who was Vyasa, my guru. And then Satyavati said, "If you approve of it, O Bhishma, my son, the great ascetic Krishna Dwapayan, will come and beget the offspring we desire." At the mention of my guru's name, Bhishma joined his palms and said, "O queen, what you have suggested is in keeping with propriety, and has my full approval. For the acts of the intelligent man arising from deep and patient thought will only lead virtue to greater virtue." And then when Bhishma said this, Satyavati thought of Swaj Dwapayan, who was then engaged in interpreting the Vedas. Divining that he was needed by his mother, the Guru came instantly to her without anybody's knowledge. Seeing her son after a lapse of so many years, Satyavati wept bitterly, and her firstborn wiped her tears, saying,
"I have come, mother, to fulfill your wishes. Command me."
Bidding Vyasa to sit down, Satyavati said, "This is my command and Bhishma's request. For the love of Vichitraveer, who is as much your brother as Bhishma, and for your dynasty and for the people, grace the wives of Vichitravirya with children. Vyasa replied,
I shall carry out your orders with a spotless mind.
Vyasa said, each princess shall conceive a noble son, if she is patient with my strong odor, ugly face and unkempt appearance. After much persuasion from Satyavati, Ambika received the rishi in her chamber, but terrified by his forbidding looks, she shut her eyes. And as she kept her eyes shut, as long as the rishi remained in the chamber. Later, when Satyavati asked him, shall the princess have a noble son? The rishi replied, the son shall have the strength of 10,000 elephants. He shall, in his time, beget 100 sons. But his mother shut out her vision, so he shall be born blind. Hearing these words, Satyavati cried out,
How can a blind man be a king? In all property, you must give the Kurus another king.
So after the birth of the blind son, Dhritarashtra, Vyasa approached Ambalika, the younger princess. Gripped by fear at the sight of Rishi, she turned pale, and Vyasa said, Fear has turned you pale, for which your son shall be pale of skin, and he shall be named Pandu. Disappointed a second time, Satyavati begged of the Rishi for another child by Ambika. But when the time came, the self-willed Ambika sat in her maid, decked in her own ornaments, to receive the sage. The maid waited upon him with respect and reverence. And the son born to her by the grace of my Guru was Vidur, the brother of Dhritarashtra and Pandu, the propagators of the Kuru race. The sage was pleased and said,
You shall no longer be a slave, and the child that you bear shall be the intelligent and wise.
And with the auspicious birth of these children, Kaurung Jangala and the Kurus grew in prosperity. O monarch, under the just rule of Bhishma, the land prospered in peace and plenty, attracting settlers from other kingdoms who swelled the population. Bhishma raised Dhritarashtra, Pandu, Vidur as his own sons, and they grew up into fine young men, accomplished scholars and soldiers. When Pandu came of age, he ascended the throne, which Dhritarashtra could not because he was blind. Then one day, Bhishma sat too wise and learned Vidur. The time is ripe for us to plan the future of our dynasty. There are 3 eminently worthy maidens. Gandhari, the daughter of Subala, Kunti, the daughter of Shura, and Madri, the sister of Shalya. I think they will make ideal wives for our princess to keep our race alive. What do you think? To this, Vidur replied,
You have been mother, father, and a spiritual guide to us. What you deem best is the best for us.
And then Bhishma heard that Gandhari had obtained from Shiva a boon that would make her the mother of 100 sons, and he lost no time in sending messengers to Subala, the king of Gandhar. Though hesitant at first because the bridegroom was blind, Subala gave in because Dhritarashtra was a Kuru prince. When Gandhari heard that she was to be married to a blind prince, she blindfolded herself in a gesture of love and respect. Shakuni, the son of Subala, escorted his sister to the land of the Kurus, where she was respectfully received. And there, under Bhishma's directions, the wedding of Dhritarashtra and Gandhari was celebrated with great pomp. Then Shakuni, having given away his sister along with many valuable robes, returned to Gandhar. Thus did Dhritarashtra obtain the daughter of Subala for a wife. Then the monarch said, O sage, you spoke of Kunti as the daughter of Shura the Yadav, but our elders always spoke of her as the daughter of Kunti Bhoja. To this Vaishampayan replied, Kunti Bhoja, the son of Shura's paternal aunt, was childless, and Shura, fulfilling a promise, gave his firstborn to Kunti Bhoja. The child, named Pritha, came to be known as Kunti in her new home. There, it was her duty to attend upon revered guests. Once, while yet a young girl, she pleased the stern seer Durvas with her patient hospitality, and he said, "With the mantra I am about to give you, you will be able to summon whichever celestials you like to beget your children." As soon as Durvas went away, the curious princess, to see if the mantra would work, summoned Surya, the god of light. And a son was born to her, clad in armor and decked with earrings. The son, who later became known in the world as Karan. Distressed by the birth of a son in her maidenhood and afraid of her relatives, Kunti thought deeply on what was best for her to do. And she cast the infant into the river where the husband of Radha, of the Suta, found him. And he and his wife raised the infant as their own son. And because he was clad in armor and gold earrings, they called him Vasushen. Meanwhile, Kunti Bhoja invited several princesses and kings so that Kunti could select a husband from among them. And Kunti beheld Pandu, the noblest in the royal assembly. Pandu, the scion of the Kuru race, magnificent like another Indra in his royal splendor, attracted Kunti, and with becoming modesty, she advanced towards him and garlanded him. After the wedding, Kunti Bhoja presented his son-in-law with many valuable gifts. Pandu, along with Kunti, then returned to Hastinapur. Bhishma then decided that Pandu should have a second wife, and he thought of Madri, the sister of Shalya, king of Madra. He proceeded to the capital of the Madra king, taking with him his wise counselors, a vast army, and great wealth. Shalya received Bhishma with respect due to him and then asked him the reason for his visit. Bhishma replied, "I have heard you have a beautiful and virtuous sister, Madri, who I think will make an ideal wife for Pandu. Since two dynasties are evenly matched in strength and stature, I request you to accept this proposal." To this, the ruler of Madra replied, "Eager though we are for this alliance with the Kurus, there is an inviolable custom observed by our family, which makes it improper for you to ask for my sister in this fashion, and for this I cannot give you a ready assurance in this matter." The well-known custom was not unknown to the all-knowing Kuru elder. Bhishma said with a smile, "It shall be observed." And Bhishma, confirming in the Madra custom, gave Shalya untold wealth in gold, pearls, corals, precious stones and cloth, beside elephants, horses and chariots. Shalya readily accepted those precious gifts and gave away his sister, decked in ornaments, to the Kurus. Pleased with his mission, Bhishma rode out to Hastinapur with Madri by his side. Later, on an auspicious day and moment, Pandu was united with Madri. Pandu spent the next 30 days in the company of his two wives. Then, with a well-equipped army, he set out on a campaign of conquest. He first subdued the Dasharnas. Then he attacked and slew Dirgha, the arrogant king of Maghad, and ransacked his treasury. Then, marching into Mithil, he vanquished the Videhas, and then, heading his armies against the Kashis, Sumhas and Pundras, he established himself as the sovereign ruler. Like a mighty fire, whose far-reaching flames were his arrows, whose splendor his weapons, Pandu vanquished all the other kings on his route and made them vassals of the Kurus. And these vassal kings brought him gifts of precious stones, pearls, corals, much gold and silver, and cows and horses, and fine chariots and elephants, and asses and camels, and buffaloes and goats, and sheep, and blankets, and beautiful hides, and cloth woven out of fur. The king of Hastinapur accepted these gifts and returned to his capital. The citizens surged forward with Bhishma at their head to welcome the virtuous Pandu. They had not proceeded far when they saw the never-ending stream of tributes brought in by their king, and then they exclaimed,
Pandu has brought wealth and glory to the Kurus. He is truly the monarch of the world.
As soon as Pandu saw Bhishma, he fell at his feet, and Bhishma embraced Pandu and wept tears of joy. And with a flourish of conches and trumpets, the triumphant king entered his capital, Hastinapur. Then, at the command of Dhritarashtra, Pandu distributed the wealth he had acquired by his valor to Bhishma, Satyavati, Ambika, and Ambalika. And Pandu sent a portion to Vidur also. Bhishma then heard of a beautiful daughter of King Devak born to Shuda wife. He brought her and married her to Vidur. Thus did the wise and truthful Bhishma uphold his vow and yet keep the Kuru line alive by obtaining sons for his step-brothers, widows, and in due course virtuous wives for those sons. And thus ends the second session of our rendering of Vaishampayan's narration during the intervals in the sacrificial rites of Janamjaya's Sarpasatra of Vyasa's immortal Ityasa, the Mahabharata. Stay tuned for the Mahabharata chapter 3, which is called The Advent of the Kuru Princes. Please like, subscribe and share this video. Thank you.